it's not that San Francisco doesn't want to pay him. It's Denver saying, if you want to get out of your situation, we'll help you get out, but you got to take less money. So I see both sides of the coin here. Denver's trying to say, we're trying to help you get out of a situation that you don't want to be in. San Francisco doesn't want to get rid of him, or do they? We'll bring John McMullen into the conversation here, John. You know, I think it's very interesting. It sounds like this deal is falling apart. It's a deal that sounded like it made sense. Does Chip Kelly want to get rid of Colin Kaepernick?
Well, I don't think we know yet fully. Today was their first day of their off-season program, and we talked about that last week. Colin Kaepernick did show up, so he had $400,000 on the line. He's obviously concerned about his pay as a whole. And I agree with you. He's earned it, and $11.9 million, which is what his base salary is, that's not a bad number for what you've seen guys get this offseason. But I think you're 100% right as you frame things from Denver's perspective. San Francisco is going to pay him that money. So it's up to him. If he wants to be a 49er, he can be a 49er and cash those paychecks. If he wants to move on, and all indications from his camp is he doesn't want any part of San Francisco, then he's got to make some adjustments to his thinking, because Denver, A, doesn't have the cap space, and B, they don't want to pay him that.
Right.
So it's an easy decision.
Yeah, so let me get this straight. By staying with the 49ers, he locks himself into like $14.5 million with his bonuses and his salary there. So this is just basically him deciding whether or not he wants to play for what, about $9 million less?
Yeah, well, they're asking him to take basically a $5 million pay cut from his base salary. But you're right, the bonuses, he'd be up over $14 million. Hasn't really been confirmed what that, if that would take a hit as well. But certainly either way, it's a significant downtick in his salary, and that's what he's balking at. So again, there's no real argument from the 49ers perspective. They have already made their decision, and they guaranteed his base salary come April 1st. They made that decision. So they're willing to pay him that full $14+ million. Now it's in his court. Look, do you want to go to the Super Bowl champions, who I'm just pulling it up, have right now $1.6 million under the cap as we speak today. So not only would they have to make adjustments if he took that pay cut, they'd still have to cut a player to fit him under the cap. So they can't afford to pay him what he makes in San Francisco. So it's a pretty easy decision for Colin Kaepernick.
So they're not even
it's about the money.
John, they're not even this isn't even about Denver disrespecting him, quote unquote. They just physically or financially can't afford to pay him what he gets paid.
Exactly. Right now they're $1.6 million of cap room, and they still haven't signed. Remember, the draft is coming up. That includes all your draft choice. So they're going to have to make maneuvers just to sign their draft picks. On top of bringing in somebody like Kaepernick, they would have to cut a player, possibly two, possibly even three, to fit his cap number. So it's a team that's up against it. But from a football perspective, it's obviously a better situation for Colin Kaepernick. And it might be the proverbial take one step back to take two steps forward, because if he sort of gets his career going again in Denver, the money in the back end will probably be far more. So it's another example of, does the player really want to bet on himself and go to the best situation? Because I guarantee you, the San Francisco 49ers, even if he fits in well with Chip Kelly, and you and I have discussed that many times, I think he does. Mm-hmm. That's a bad football team.
Yeah,
from
and
top to bottom.
Yeah, and
it is a bad roster.
They had a deal in place over the weekend for a mid-round pick. Is that even a good deal for San Francisco? Why? I'm pretty amazed that San Francisco just wants to get rid of him for a mid-round pick.
Well, I think there's two schools of thought. I think if Jim Tomsula was still there, and obviously Trent Baalke is, he's the general manager, there's no question Colin Kaepernick would be gone. I think the only reason there's any talk of him returning is because they have a new head coach, and there isn't ill will with him and the quarterback. Kaepernick, from his perspective, he was done with that organization after last season. He had 3 off-season surgeries. He had them all in Colorado, away from the team. He's been rehabbing away from the team. He wanted nothing to do with the organization, but when push comes to shove, it's tough to give away $5 million, and that's where he is mentally.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. There was a meeting this weekend between Elway and Kaepernick. Adam Schefter reported later that evening that the two teams agreed for a deal on a mid-round pick. And then the Broncos wanted the 49ers to pay part of Kaepernick's salary there. The Broncos were willing to pay $7 million of the salary. They wanted San Francisco to pay the remaining $4.9. Sounds like that wasn't going to happen. And then it looks like this deal is all but dead. So we might get to see Kaepernick play for Chip Kelly either way now. So we'll see. We'll keep our eyes on that because a pretty interesting story with Kaepernick, who, by the way, John, we're talking about a guy like Kaepernick because he at one point was a guy that many people thought was the next, great player in this league. He went to a Super Bowl. He had been to the NFC Championship game. He had kind of come out of nowhere. Now, keep in mind, he was a second-round pick. It's not like he's like a seventh-rounder that came out of nowhere, but he was a pretty good story. What happened to him that basically he's on the trade block and people are almost willing to give up on him for nothing?
Well, I think a lot of it is similar to what happened to Chip Kelly here in the fact that he was a unique quarterback who got thrown in there mid-season. Remember, Alex Smith got hurt with concussion, and the 49ers were a heck of a team at that point, possibly the most talented team in football. And the coach at the time, Jim Harbaugh, made a very controversial decision to go to Colin Kaepernick because he thought he needed more explosiveness from that particular position. And all of a sudden, you got a team that goes to 3 straight NFC Championship games, 1 Super Bowl, where they're 5 yards away from winning it with Kaepernick against the Ravens. And I think a lot of what happened to him, you could go back to that Super Bowl where John Harbaugh told basically Terrell Suggs to forget about the zone read fake and just hit Colin Kaepernick again and again and again. And you're talking about a very physical player, and I think the rest of the league saw what happened. And when you're a coach and you have a quarterback who's getting banged around like that, what is your thought process? You immediately start, I got to protect this guy. Because the last thing you want in the NFL is to have your backup quarterback in the game. And I think a lot of it with quarterbacks with mobility comes to the fact that coaches realize they're not going to last long if you keep running the football time and time again in this league. And that's why I think you see guys have short shelf lives, not only because they get banged up, but because from a coaching perspective, teams get a little jittery about running that. And the strength of his game is the zone read. He's not a drop-back passer. And if you try to make him into that, similar to RG3, he's not going to be very good when you do it.
All right, John. The Philadelphia District Attorney's Office announced that LeSean McCoy will not face charges for that role in the February nightclub. I guess alleged now because there's no charges, meaning they didn't have enough evidence. Your take on this story?
Well, it's difficult anytime you have a bar fight, even on video, and Seth Williams had different witnesses giving them different stories, and it's very difficult to prove which side started the fight. And I think a lot of people jumped to the conclusion, because it was off-duty police officers, that McCoy and his friends started things. But that's not necessarily the case. And it's difficult to prove. The fact that one side won the fight doesn't necessarily mean they're guilty of anything. And I think that's where it came down to, is the fact that Seth Williams wasn't comfortable bringing charges. And I know I just got a press release from the Fraternal Order of Police of Philadelphia, and the president, John McNesby, is not very happy about it, accused Seth of wanting season tickets and things like that. Huh. But I'm not sure if John realizes that LeSean McCoy no longer plays on the Eagles. I don't think since one's Buffalo Bills season tickets. So I'm not sure
if you go back to this,
holds water.
If you go back to this story, the mayor of Philadelphia and the police chief, did they not call for some sort of action to be taken here?
Yeah, and that was irresponsible, to be blunt, because nobody knew. And if you're the mayor of Philadelphia, you shouldn't be speaking out of turn before anyone has any information. And this is not a defense of Shady McCoy, because he's had many issues in the past, and he keeps getting into this kind of trouble. And for all we know, he did do something wrong. But when you have a group of people at a bar, many of them intoxicated at 3, 4 in the morning, and all of a sudden the fight starts, you can imagine trying to interview witnesses. You have one guy saying, oh, no, he started it. The next guy is saying somebody else started it. And that's really, when you're a district attorney, you're basically, your first thought is, can I win this case in court? And if you don't think you can win it, why are you going to bring it to fruition? I think that more than anything is what happened here.
So yeah, basically, the video, I think it shows that there was some sort of altercation, correct?
Oh yeah, the video shows the fight clearly. That's not an issue. That's stipulated. The issue is who started it, and if somebody did it in self-defense or things of that nature. If, for instance, if an off-duty police officer, even if he's a police officer, he's basically a civilian
at that point
when he's
right.
off-duty. Yeah, if he starts the fight, you're allowed to defend yourself.
So why would the Fraternal Order of Police be not be happy about the DA's office not filing charges? What do they see differently?
Well, they see that they're loyal to their constituency. That's basically it. I mean, they want it prosecuted because they hurt police officers. And it was, as I said, it was Shady's side that won the fight, and the police officers were put in the hospital. So anytime that happens, you want retribution. I think that's where John McNesby has fallen down. I understand that, but I think it's a little unfair to paint Seth Williams, who I've talked to a number of times, and I think he's an above-board guy, accusing him of looking for favors because it's a high-profile athlete. I just don't see that being in his nature.
So, I mean, if you go look through all the stuff here, and he, not going to be – now, back in February, it was reported that charges were expected to be filed, and we thought that McCoy could miss some time. Now, nothing here. Do you feel that it's justified?
Well, I don't know if it's justified, and the way I said is how I think it went down. I just doesn't think you can win this in court. I don't think it's saying LeSean McCoy is innocent by any stretch of the imagination.
I guess the question would be, though, he can't win it in court because of who it is?
No, I
mean,
think
if this is you and we get into that same fight, are we getting charged?
I don't think so. I don't think so because of the environment. The reason why, as I said, if you're in a bar fight at 3 in the morning, by and large, you're going to have a lot of stories going in different directions. And that's when people are intoxicated. That's what I think happened here is people saw the video and they saw off-duty police officers getting beat up. And, yeah, there's going to be charges. They're going to have to pay for this. But then all of a sudden, when you get on the ground and you start interviewing witnesses, and as I said, you have a group telling you one story where the police officer started it, and another group telling you another story where Shady and his friend started it. Well, all of a sudden, who do you believe? Who are you going to put on the witness stand? And if both sides are just putting both sides of that argument on the stand, that's what you're going to get. You get no real answers. It's not going to go anywhere.
Could he still?
So unfortunately,
go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, you have to make difficult decisions. It's sad that nobody's getting charged because there's no doubt somebody was at fault here, but he can't prove which side was at fault. So why waste the tax dollars? Is I think his perspective.
Could the NFL get involved still by seeing that video and say, "Look, you got into a fight on video in a nightclub"? you got some problems still.
Yeah, the NFL can do whatever they want, and they could use that video and say exactly what you said. You got into a fight. I don't care who's responsible for it. You sullied the shield, and we have the power to suspend you. And that's what the players gave to the commissioner in collective bargaining. So, yeah, it is certainly within the NFL's right to suspend Shady McCoy if they want to go in that direction.
All right, John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN. There are some reports out there about Tennessee and that they are very willing to trade that number one pick overall. Do you anticipate a lot of calls? Do you think that they will eventually get out of that spot?
I think they want to, and they want to badly. And they want to convince somebody that Carson Wentz is worth it or Jared Goff is worth it. And if you believe that as a team that doesn't have the number one spot, you have to get in front of Cleveland, and that makes that pick that much more enticing for another team and for Tennessee to get out of there because, as we all know, they already have Marcus Mariota, so they're not going to take a quarterback, and most likely if they're forced to stay there, they're going to take Laramie Tunsil, the left tackle, who's a very good player, definitely higher rated on the board than any quarterback in this draft. But we all know the value of positions in the NFL, and quarterback is the be-all, end-all. So their mentality is we can go back a few spots, still get the player we like, and garner some other assets because, look, there's no team in football that has won less than the Tennessee Titans over the last 2 years. They've won 5 football games. So they need help in far more positions than just one left tackle. And anything they can gain extra, they're desperate to do it.
Yeah, and there's some reports out there. One of the teams that called for the number one overall pick are the 49ers. So that another little interesting wrinkle to this whole thing. And 9 News Denver, Mike Kliss insisting the Broncos trade talks are still on. So we got some mixed signals on that deal as well. And, John, a quick couple Eagles notes here. We talked about Wisiniewski last week. He signs today, so they add some offensive line. Do you think he signed to be the starting left guard?
I think as we sit here today, he's the starting left guard. I certainly think he's an upgrade over Alan Barber or Andrew Gardner or Malcolm Bunch or Matt Tobin or the cast of thousands you want to throw in there. How much he has left, that can be debated, but he's a veteran guy with significant experience starting in this league. Most of it at center, but he did play at left as a rookie in Oakland, and he is a versatile guy. I think that's part of it because I think he's their best left guard as we talk today, and he also gives them a tremendous backup for Jason Kelsey. And if you remember last year, David Molk was originally the backup, but he got hurt early in the season. He's now retired, and you got a guy like Josh Andrews as a backup, which you can't feel very, very comfortable with. So this is another one of those prudent bargain bin moves in the second phase of free agency. And it makes the Eagles a better team. Not significantly better, but definitely a better football team.
And
it was a good move.
Yeah, and what I like about it is, you got those guys like Alan Barbary, Josh Andrews, and who's the other guy that started there last year? And
Andrew Gardner, Matt Tobin on the right side.
There you go. And they just re-signed Tobin today. There's a lot of competition and a lot of more versatility where, as you mentioned, if Kelsey gets hurt, you could use Wisiniewski, and now you have guys like Barbary who are more suited for part-time roles more so than full-time roles. So I think it gives them a lot more competition at training camp. Last stuff for John here on the football fix. Greg Hardy had a sit-down with Adam Schefter and to discuss his past allegations of domestic violence. He had this one-on-one interview, John, saying, quote, "I've never put my hand on any woman in my whole entire life. No, sir." He said he was raised to never hit a woman. He did nothing wrong. Saying that I did nothing wrong is a stretch, he said, but saying I'm innocent is correct. He is still a free agent. I guess this is the Greg Hardy Change the Perception tour.
Yeah, he's trying. He didn't do a very good job. I think the best way to him to change his perception is just not talk, although maybe he can latch on with San Francisco because there were so many contradictions in that interview. Chip Kelly would certainly like him because one time he's saying, as you mentioned, he never hit a woman. Not to say I haven't done anything wrong. Well, what'd you do wrong? Throwing the woman on the bed of guns at its core, if you want to sort of rehabilitate your image, the first thing you have to do is apologize and ask for forgiveness. I think this country as a whole is fond of giving out second chances, but to get a second chance, you have to show some sort of bow your head and repentance, and we haven't seen that from Greg Hardy, who just kind of spins it the way of, I did nothing wrong. The problem is we've all seen the court transcripts, we've all seen the photos, and something happened to that woman. And other than Greg Hardy, nobody else was there. So there needs to be an explanation if you claim you never hit a woman, because she looked like she got hit.
Yep, and I would think if you're trying to clean up your image, showing up for the interview with a ski hat, a T-shirt, and capri pants are probably not the best attire that you want to do to try to change that view. Just saying, I could be wrong. I'm not the best dresser.
Yeah, he's not. He's not all that well versed in public relations. We see that, and it's a guy who's got tremendous talent, but he's been getting bad advice, or he doesn't listen to his advice. I hesitate to say that because I find it very hard to believe that any agent who reps NFL players wouldn't be smart enough to give this guy the proper advice and what to do. So those likely scenarios, the fact he just isn't listening to the good advice he's getting, and he's throwing away his career because it's going to be very, very difficult. You never say never in this league because the Raiders just re-signed Aldon Smith today, and we know all his issues, and he's still suspended. And he'll have to ask for readmittance to the league in November. There's no guarantee he's going to play at all next season. So guys who have talent are always going to get chance after chance after chance, but he is really, really making it difficult for any team that would even think about trying to bring Greg Hardy in.
All right, John McMullen, JF McMullen on Twitter, and, of course, 97.3 ESPN.com, and for all his National Football League coverage at todayspigskin.com. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, Mike.